Welcome to Behind the Smiles podcast, where we go beyond the surface while talking to labs and DSOs about everything your highlight reel doesn't show. If you're into stories, strategy, and a little bit of startup chaos, this one is for you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another new episode of Behind the Smiles podcast. Today, I have with me Matt Everatt. Matt is the director for S4S Dental and an industry veteran with 30 plus years of experience in dental industry. So I wouldn't do a justice explaining who Matt Everatt is. So Matt, I think over to you if you want to give a brief introduction about yourself and your experience to date.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nipun. Thanks for this opportunity first as well. So I've worked in the industry, yes, sadly now, over 30 years. I started out my career in maxillofacial technology and orthodontics. So I worked in a few different teaching hospitals around the UK. I worked in one of the district hospitals first, and then moved on to went to university in Manchester, studied with the likes of Chris Marion and so on, and then moved down to London, went to Guy's Hospital for a few years there, and gradually worked my way back up north past Cambridge. Worked at Adam Brooks in Cambridge in maxillofacial and orthodontics there, before taking the big leap into the private world of dental laboratories. Always had a little bit of input into the private industry whilst I was working in teaching hospitals. I had my own private business, but then took the leap in 2005 and became one of the co-founders of what is now known as S4S Dental Lab.
Brilliant, great. And Matt, you're also the editor of the Dentistry Lab Magazine as well.
Absolutely.
So how did that come about from being the director and having and I think you have a lot of entrepreneurial experience as well. So how did that change happen or that addition to your profile happen from being an editor of a magazine?
So I always keen on kind of doing as much as I can for the profession. Certainly, dental technology. You know, we're often seen as the silent ones. We're often the hidden part of the profession. There's only 5,000 of us, so we're a much smaller group than any other dental care professional group. So I always had a real passion to try and promote our little pocket of dentistry. I first started out teaching at colleges and universities, so I did my teaching qualification as well, which kind of led on to, it's quite a natural progression to, you're writing lesson plans, to writing articles and having a bit to say about the profession. So that's kind of how I got into it. I was originally invited when sadly we lost an industry stalwart, Mr. Larry Brown, who was the editor of the Dental Technician magazine back in the day. And Larry, unfortunately, was very, very ill a few years ago, and I got invited to become the editor of the Dental Technician magazine. And then I've progressed on to work with FMC, who are the publishers of Dentistry magazine and the Laboratory magazine. And I must say, has been absolutely fantastic. It was we reintroduced the title about 3 years ago now, I think it was. The team there are absolutely fantastic and do so much to raise the profile of dental technicians. It's been a great step. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Great, thanks, Matt. And Matt, as a follow-on question from there, because I read your recent post regarding, I think that there's the Lab 20
Yes.
leading persons in the lab. That's something that's going on. Maybe you want to touch on that. But I think underlying question is around why do lab technicians need their kind of profile to be raised? What's the gap that you're talking about here? Why do they need a section which is not covered in the Dentistry magazine? Just to be very specific, but in general as well.
Yeah.
What's the underlying gap that you're trying to address through all these activities that are happening?
So that's a great question. And we, for many, many years, we weren't included in any awards or lists or anything that exists. And as part of the team, I felt really strongly that we should be. Awards aren't everyone's cup of tea. I appreciate that, and these lists aren't everyone's cup of tea as well. But I think what I saw as certainly as FMC did the initiative of Dentistry's Top 50 several years ago, I was quite drawn to that, and I always every year I would always put a few nominations in, and sometimes I see one of my nominations on the list, which was great to see. But we didn't have anything for dental technicians or clinical dental technicians for that matter. And I personally felt it's a really good thing to recognise the skill, the profession, and give someone a pat on the back. We are often the ones stuck in the back room, making head down at the bench, making dentures and crowns and bridges, and patients don't see that. Patients don't see the fact that we're the ones making the teeth. So I spoke to FMC and asked them, could we do something in regards to getting a section for dental technicians and CDTs in the next dentistry awards. This was a few years ago now, and sure enough, they listened, and they introduced three categories with dental laboratory of the year, technician of the year, and clinical dental technician of the year. Then I had another little dig at them and asked them if we could do something similar to the dentistry top 50, because they weren't a time. There was a time when technicians didn't appear in that list. This last year has been fantastic, and we've actually got dental technicians appearing in that list in the dentistry top 50. So that's a great step forward. So the leading 20, the laboratories leading 20, was an initiative brought about. I think it was this will be the third year, I think now. It's not an awards ceremony. It's FMC put it out there, and I posted on LinkedIn just the other day, asking for dental technicians, dentists for that matter, hygienists, therapists, whoever it wants to put a nomination in for a dental technician or a clinical dental technician, to say, well done, this is fantastic, we really appreciate what you're doing, and to put a nomination into FMC. What they then do is they collate a list of nominations and have a look at that person's profile. How influential are they in the industry? What sort of things are they doing? Doing charitable work? Are they teaching? Are they out there lecturing and so on? So that's kind of that's where it came from, really. The leading 20. I appreciate it. Again, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really, really think that there are so many dental technicians out there that just deserve that extra pat on the back. And sometimes, if it comes unexpected, it might just be a nice thing to really just give them a little bit of a, thank you, well done.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that is needed as well. And when I see a lot of trade press or other events, there are
Yeah.
very few events that happen around dental labs or celebrating dental lab technicians. And I think you mentioned that patients do not know where the actual work is coming from. And I was speaking with my wife. She's a dentist as well, and she usually struggles with changing labs, or if the lab doesn't do the right work. And she spoke to a couple of dentists who are very successful in their job, and she asked them, like, why is your so much of consistency across all your work? And the dentist told that behind every successful dentist there is a brilliant lab technician, and they carry that lab along with them, no matter how many clinics they are changing. And I think it's so important, the role of lab technicians and the pairing of that dentist and the lab, which is kind of not celebrated or not recognized or acknowledged that much.
Absolutely, yeah. I think and it's great, when I love working with dentists that appreciate that, and we're very fortunate that we are working in an age where that relationship has gotten so much better. Yeah, I'm sadly I'm 30 plus years in now, and back when I first started, that wasn't the case. I'm not saying it was all bad. It was, fortunately, I worked in hospitals, so I worked with some really great clinicians and worked shoulder to shoulder with them. But in the private profession or outside of the hospital environment, very much there was very much a you're subservient to me, and you provide the work I ask you for, and so on. That's changed. That really has changed, and it's a fantastic profession to work in. I strongly believe.
Yeah. And Matt, I was going through some of your posts again as the preparation to this podcast episode, and I saw, I think last year toward the end of year, there was a Christmas poem that you had written as a post, and I was just intrigued by that. Also, I picked up some of the So I did some research and I was looking at some numbers using ChatGPT and just trying to find out some stats. And again, these are the numbers that I got. So for every dental technician in UK, there are 9 dentists. So this is the ratio, how few the number of dental technicians are. I looked the same figures, similar figures for US. It's for every technician there are 4.5 dentists, and for Europe is 1 is to 3. So for every technician there are approximately 3 dentists. Why do you think that UK is so like kind of behind when it comes to that ratio, and is that healthy or is that normal that you have seen, or has that changed in the last few years with not a lot of technicians joining the workforce?
Yeah, it's quite a complex subject. Interesting you got those figures as well, because I sat in a lecture with David Smith, who's also trying his best to do his bit to raise the profile of technicians and introducing actually an apprenticeship scheme for dental technicians. So a few things, and some of this is my opinion. Some of it is very much, part of the profession. One of the things, registration and qualifications has become a bit of a concern, not concern, but it's up there for discussion, because what we found were over the last few years we had an influx of dental technicians with degrees, master's degrees, coming out with super qualifications, some fantastic technicians. But then I think some of the institutions began to close, so we had less people being trained. We had colleges closing, so the access to courses was less and less and less. The numbers of registrations, the registrations of dental technicians on the GDC has fallen year on year from the date we first became registered in 2009. Now, was it, or 8? I think it was 8. But year on year, we've declined in numbers. We know that there's an aging population in terms of dental technicians and lab owners. So there's a lot of lab owners now, and I'll be one in 2 weeks' time. 2 and a bit weeks' time, I'll be 50 plus. I think that the stats, those there's lots of lab owners that are mid-50s and older. So there's quite a few people that have retired, left, and they've never been replaced. So the numbers are declining, and you've probably read the article that I wrote of several of them now. I think we're on something like volume 4 now of the curious demise of dental technicians. But what we've also seen is, because of registration, some of the technicians have left and come back and now still work in labs, but working in different roles. So they're not calling themselves dental technicians, perhaps lab assistants, or they're doing different roles within labs, maybe even admin roles. So that's kind of changed somewhat. I would like to see that, with the introduction of apprenticeship schemes, we might start seeing more dental technicians come through, seeing at school level. There's a few of us now that doing our bit. Andrea Johnson's another good one who she attends every single secondary school, I think, around where she lives, trying to get a dental technician or people interested in dental technology to come through the ranks. I know David Smith is doing his bit so that we can hopefully see a real good career pathway for dental technicians going through college, going on to actually do degrees, and it'd be funded all the way through. And the NHS are actually putting some money into that pilot scheme, so that's really exciting. And then we have the College of General Dentistry, the likes of Bill Sharpling, who has really been an advocate for that, bringing dental technicians and clinical dental technicians on board, and trying to raise a profile to get a great career pathway for dental technicians. Whereas that has been lacking in the past. Whereas there's something for dentists. There's plenty of postgraduate qualifications out there, master's degrees and so on, and specialisms. Same for hygienists and therapists. So I think we're getting there. Is it health? I think you asked the question, is it healthy? I think we're on the cusp. Excuse the pun. I think we're on the cusp of it being potentially unhealthy. If we can turn it around now, I think we'll be good. With the incoming dental technology, the CAD CAM, digital technology, should I say, introduction of more and more CAD CAM work. I think we're in a good position. If we can just turn it around and get some more fresh blood coming through, I think we'll be in a good position.
Yeah, makes sense. Because when I was looking at that number of 1:9 ratio, I was just thinking that one dental technician is managing relationship with 9 dentists, give or take, if you just take it at a high level. And if an average dentist is sending 1 or 2 orders a day to the same lab, that means that you're always behind on orders, because in a day you cannot push out 15 to 20 orders per technician. In that case, I was just thinking that it may be unhealthy.
Yeah,
But again, that was just a question for you, Matt.
yeah, absolutely. I think, and it's probably down to the type of work we're doing now in the UK. Um, Typically, lots of labs have existed on NHS work, which has been the lower end of the price bracket, and we've kind of come out of those times, I think, where we're doing less and less of that and more complex work. The likes of, I think, in Germany, I think you mentioned it was the other way around. Was it three technicians per dentist or something like that? I think it was something
Yeah, so it was one technician for three dentists. So
per
it's
dentist.
it's three times better than UK
The
in
UK,
that
yeah, yeah,
ratio. Yeah.
yeah, and perhaps that's Germany and Sweden and some of the European countries were always kind of ahead of the game in terms of digital technology, I think. And we are certainly, some of the work I see now, some of the labs that are producing some of the digital work are incredible. Just in a lab last week, and digital smile design is just mind-blowingly really good. Yeah, amazing quality work. So maybe have we been a bit top heavy because the work was a little bit more analog, perhaps? So maybe we're seeing that just balance out a little bit as well. So that's why I think right now we're probably at that good point where we're not we are in demand, and there's just about enough of us, and the technology changing. I think that's perhaps where we're at right now.
Great. And I think you mentioned about technology. Do you think, Matt, that the labs are investing enough in the hardware and the software side of technology? Because I think that's where the efficiency comes in.
Mm.
That's where you can serve nine dentists being just one technician. Do you think that they're investing enough in general? Like, because you have a lot of colleagues in the industry as well. So do you see that enough investment is going in?
I would have said a few years ago, no, it's not. I think there were a few, and I've seen it. I've seen a few dental technicians have said, no, I'm at an age where it'll never catch on. We'll never be printing 3D dentures in my lifetime, and that rapidly changed. And with some of the work we're seeing now with the 3D printed dentures, I don't. It's been a long, long time since I've made any dentures. It was when I was in the hospitals. But seeing some of the 3D printed work that some of my peers post on social media, such as Instagram or Facebook, it's mind-blowingly good. So I think we're at a point now where I think even some of the ones that have probably got 5 or 10 years left, they're going to have to invest in some of the technology if they want to keep up. Yeah, so maybe we were a bit slow in some parts. We were I say we S4S. I think we were very innovative, and we jumped on board quite early on with 3D printing. In fact, I think we came to it 3D printing a little bit too early. We were working alongside an engineering firm who actually printed nose cones and wings for Formula One cars. I shan't mention which ones, but we were working alongside them, seeing how we could try and get rid of our plaster room. And this is back in 2005, so 20 years ago. So we went into it a little bit early, and the cost of printing and so on was very, very expensive. We ran shoulder to shoulder with how the industry was progressing, and we were able to jump on it quite quickly and quite nimbly, really. So we were quite agile in terms of making that first step. And in fact, to a point where some of the manufacturers of these 3D printers and so on were coming to us as an early adopter, if you like, and asking us to trial out some of their processes. And I know, for instance, yourself with the software that you provide, we were perhaps one of the first ones. I'm not saying we were the first, but I think we're one of the first ones, and what we've developed is something quite special.
And is that, Matt, like, is that a culture within S4S? I'm just trying to understand where that mindset is coming from. But totally, I think for us as well, you were one of our first, not the first, but I think in the UK side of things, you were our first big UK customer. But I think just trying to understand, I think you mentioned about the printers and so I'm just trying to decouple those things. So you mentioned about the printers, you mentioned that you were working with that engineering firm who used to, make, parts of the cars for the racing ones. Was that coming from your motorsports, or I think you have a lot of interest in racing cars as well? Is there a link over there? And then secondly, in terms of the culture of innovation and being the early adopter, where is that coming from within S4S family?
Um, so the car obsession, I'm gonna say that didn't come from that. It was just chance. It was just a company we approached said, this is the stuff we're doing. So we're more than capable of printing some teeth. Like, oh wow! So obviously, I was very, very interested, and that certainly, I wouldn't say it swayed my decision to go with that company, but it certainly was very, very interesting. So I can't apportion that to my motorsport obsession. So no, sadly not. But yeah, certainly S4S. We were very early on, and that was probably one of the founding members as well as myself. Came from an industry background, uh, outside of dentistry, if you like, a foundry, I think, and other metals they're involved in. So they're already thinking outside of the box in terms of how we can manufacture, how we can run the lab, what are the things we could be pulling in. So we set out with a goal of trying to innovate a little bit in the laboratory sector. Which when we first started in 2005, blank canvas. We didn't have any clients, we didn't have any customers, we didn't have a lab. So we built everything from scratch, which is daunting, but also a great opportunity in that there's nothing gone before you. Whereas typically we inherit businesses and the benches have been there forever and the technicians have been there forever. No, we started from day one with a vision that we can push them boundaries because nothing's been gone before us.
And is that, Matt, an active discussion within the company as well in terms of adopting new things, maybe the ways of working, maybe, kind of internal management of things? Is that always something that you want to be the first one to try things and, push the envelope, like you said?
Absolutely, yeah. Uh, it's a cultural thing, absolutely. So it's when there's no blame culture. It's got to be, we try things, we learn that way. We make mistakes. Don't make mistakes, we don't learn, right? So yeah, and the likes of Matt Norrie, who's the technical director now there at S4S. Very much, always looking for new ideas, new devices that are out there. We send the team over to IDS Cologne, which I'm sure you've been to. We go out there to see what's around. We go to innovation. I can't remember what it's called now. The innovation show. It's usually at Birmingham or at the NEC or in London.
NEC.
And we get to see things before, when they very first come to market. And so just being approachable and chatting with some of the manufacturers gives us the offer and gives us the opportunity to say, look, let's give it a try. We've our 3D printers right now. We've got. It started out as a conversation of, we're looking to do this. Would you guys be interested in looking at helping us develop some automation? And we were like, absolutely, we're ready for it. This is what we want. So we appreciate, there's learning curves to do, there's hoops to jump through. But if you put the right people on it and appreciate that there's going to be some R&D along the way, and it's some of it might not be just plug and play. Sometimes you can get in there much earlier. So yes, I think
And
it's a cultural thing.
Is
Sorry.
that you feel that, is that only kind of within the S4S, or do you see that across other labs as well? I'm assuming that that's more of a leadership style. It's a culture. It's a top-down approach within the organization as well. Some of the labs who are still kind of, some of them are somewhere in middle in the journey. They haven't adopted or adapted to the new reality. Is that something? I'm just assuming that if anyone who is listening, right, are there some leadership skills or some learnings where you failed and you learned, and now you have some sort of uh, a blueprint of how the thinking process should be? Is that something that other people can learn and be faster in approaching things no matter what?
I think that we're very fortunate. We have got some great labs in the UK, and they are and I see it. I speak to these lab owners at several shows. It's usually the same faces. They're there, they're presenting, they're lecturing, they're bringing the team along. So we have got some um, great labs in the UK, absolutely. So I think it's not just unique to S4S, definitely not. No, there are some fantastic labs. I think the difference is in the UK, perhaps, is we have a lot of labs, but with just one or two people in there, or much smaller. But yeah, the ones that and certainly I've taken, I've looked at some of the labs that have been around and see how they're developing, and you can learn lots of things from from how they present themselves, how they are at shows, and I think I'll touch on it now because I think it's worth saying as well. I alluded back to the days 30 years ago where um, certainly in the commercial lab world the doors were closed. You would not be allowed to step foot in another lab. It was very much no. You're from another lab. You're a competitor. That's changed. That's changed so much, and we share. We write articles. We present. We attend shows. We give people tours of the lab, and that's not just S4S. That's other labs. I've been invited to other labs and come around, see what we're doing, and we all learn from each other. There's plenty of work out there, and I think we've become such a better group of professionals for sharing. Dentists typically have always done it. They've always attended CPD events, conferences, and so on. We're there now. We definitely are. The doors are open. If anyone wants to come to the lab, have a look around. The doors are open. We'll do that. And equally, I've been invited to several labs, and it's a great way of setting the bar, I guess, and you're seeing where you are, because it's easy to be stuck behind those the benches, and you're thinking you're doing a good job, but really, until you start looking at colleagues, it can be you can be working in the dark somewhat, working blind.
And Matt, what changed? Because I was about to ask you that question, right? I do see that kind of dentists going to
Mm.
CPD together. They don't, if they're two clinics, they don't tend to compete with each other, although they may be competing, commercially. But then in lab side as well, it's still a business. If you're inviting, so I'm just trying to understand that if you're inviting other people, is that something that the lab operation is much more local to your area where you are? But I think as far as is like you ship outside of UK as well, the whole of UK is under your geographical reach. So what changed, and what has been before versus after, and what was that triggering point, if it was there?
Don't get me wrong. I think if there was a direct competitor, we might be a little bit cautious about things we might tell them. However, what changed? So obviously we're not local. We work with 40,000 dentists now.
Wow.
You've probably seen you see
Yeah.
probably a chunk of them, not all 40,000, but you'll see a chunk of them that are doing
Mhm.
using the orthodontic software. Um, but I think it's like and certainly with the sharing and opening the doors to each other. Just trying to think of a few examples. Steve Campbell at Nexus many years ago, when we were looking at lab software, we'd gone down a route where we were looking at different CRMs and so on. And Steve just said, "Yeah, come have a look." And subsequently, labs like Burns have been, and they've brought their staff across to ours and seen the setup we're doing and seen the processes, and not particularly, we're not competing because we're doing different things, but we've shared, and it's been very, very useful for information. We used to run. I was involved in running network breakfast meetings where we'd have labs come along, we'd have dental reps come along, we'd have nurses, dentists, a real mixture of people. And it's great to kind of just draw in all them those different ideas and thoughts, and certainly leadership. That's and the culture has been a big change in the
Okay.
profession.
Yeah, I think that if they're not competing like for like,
Yeah,
it's easier because you still grow the industry together, so it's bigger size of the pie, like
that's
where we
right.
started from.
Yeah.
uh, Matt, moving on to other questions, do you feel that the labs, we touched upon the technician, then we moved into the labs. Now in general, we think a lot about, and we talk internally lot about the relationship when it comes to a dentist and a lab's
Mm.
relationship, in terms of, the dentists are bringing the lab as they move along different practices. Dentists tend to change practices quite often, and if they're happy with the lab, they tend to bring that. So it's not a relationship with the clinic, but it's with the dentist who happens to work at an address which is of a certain clinic. And that came to us quite late, I would say 2 years ago, that, oh, no,
Yeah,
no, it's not an entity versus entity, it's a person versus person relationship in this
yeah,
dental business. Where do you see that relationship? What's your definition of that, and how does that, the DSOs come into that picture when we talk about that relationship from a lab's perspective? Who is more important, and how do labs build on that relationship from a dentist to the whole group if they want to grow their sales?
yeah. That's a fantastic question, and that runs right through the ethos at S4S, absolutely, and that's where we set out to be. We wanted to be that national lab, but with a local feel. So my experience as a dental technician in the first 13 years of my practicing as a dental technician, maxillofacial technician, was very much side by side with dentists in clinics, working very, very close together. And when I went into the commercial world, I wanted that to continue. I wanted that relationship to continue, that um, we could communicate really well with each other, and that they still feel, no matter where we are in the UK, or even, overseas, we're overseas to quite a few of our customers, that they can still communicate with us as if we're next door in the next room. And I think that was really, really important, because dentistry, 100%, and you said it, it's such a relationable, is that the right word? It's built on relationships and rapport. If that's not there, there's something missing. And I truly believe, and you mentioned it earlier on, your wife's a dentist. If you've got a good relationship with your lab, and your lab's got a good relationship with the dentist, magical things happen. I mean, I'm saying that kind of like quite, things really do. Yeah, the amazing things you can do together, and the quality of work, and the everything just works really well. And particularly if they pay the bill, that's even better. But it's I think what's made life easier now as well. Uh, I mentioned we now look after 40,000 dentists. We've got a staff of we've got a team of around about, I think around about 160 across the two sites. We have a lab in London, lab in Sheffield. Um, and we still maintain that if the dentist wants to speak to one of our technicians who's done the case, because the technicians do the cases from start to finish, they can speak to that technician. They can speak to whoever's made it. They can discuss retention. They can discuss anything they want to discuss about that particular case. If there's something difficult about it, something strange, they can discuss it. The beauty of that is now we've got things like dental portals, that we can communicate, we can share digital files, we can even plan a case within while the patients are sat in the chair, and you can see it all live on screen. We have things like WhatsApp, where I've got a client that insists on sending voice messages, which I actually really quite like, because it stops all them having to typing away with big, long, convoluted messages. But also, every time I used to try and phone this client, they were in clinic. They were busy, they were always in clinic seeing patients. And often we wouldn't get to speak until either late at night or first thing in the morning or lunchtime. So what we chose to do was communicate via WhatsApp voice messages. Got a case, this is what we want to do, how's things? And the voice message would come back, and we communicate that way and progress things on. And again, beauty of software and systems that we bring into the lab. So that's a big thing that helps us work in that kind of local way. There'll be notes on that client's account that says, please communicate via WhatsApp voice messages to this number. So we can do that. So if I'm not there and someone else needs to speak to that dentist, they can pull that information up on the client's account, and they'll see it there. And then that technician can pick up where I left off, or if it's about a new case. So, and this is where obviously your software comes in really well. With those systems in place, it just makes life so much better for that communication. We have to speak. It's and particularly when you're planning those really difficult cases, particularly in orthodontics, where we're moving teeth around. We want to move teeth around. We might be talking about restorations going in there afterwards, and are we going to do any bleaching? We have to communicate. So those things like the portals that can to help us do that. It's just a fantastic addition to our armamentarium.
I think we internally talk about, the first step that you cross is your having that data.
Yes,
Second is that the contextual communication. It's not just communication, it's contextual
exactly.
communication, which could be different from every patient to patient. But you're right, that WhatsApp example, that if I can flag how the client wants to receive their messaging,
Yeah,
I think that's a brilliant example of how small, simple things can
yeah,
impact the relationship with your biggest client.
absolutely. Because there's nothing worse, and
Yeah.
I've been trying to get hold of a lawyer today, and I've been trying for a week, and I've emailed, I've WhatsApped, I've left voicemails. They're still not going back to me. Now, if when I phoned up and their receptionist said, "Oh, this is the best way to get hold of that person," then I'd feel a lot happier. And I think with dentists, leaving lots of voice messages and things, or please can you call back. Dentists are busy. They're busy.
Yeah.
They're seeing patients, and when they're not seeing patients, they're probably dealing with the aftermath of writing notes and speaking to nurses and things. So if we can make that communication link seamless and easy, it's got to make life easy for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my wife will also agree to that. Okay. How can I make her life easy? Um, I think shifting gears, Matt, we are towards the end of this, but I think I would like to ask you about, in general, how the industry is shaping up. So we move from technician to labs
Mhm.
to general communication. Uh, let's talk about the M&A activity happening, or some sort of M&A activity happening. And we spoke about why the dental technicians are not joining, not enough people are joining the
Mhm.
workforce, but then some of the labs are struggling as well. There's a lot of vertical integration happening, or through from a DSO side of things, or labs acquiring other labs as well.
Yeah.
So what's your view on this activity when there are already so few labs around there, or lab technicians? Is M&A happening? And how do you see DSOs acquiring labs versus labs acquiring labs?
So there's a lot to unpick there.
Mm.
I think we've again. I've been in the industry for too long that I saw the initial kind of step into merger and acquisitions with the likes of Benchmark and First Dental back in the day. Talking 20 years ago, and that kind of experiment didn't quite work. For whatever reason, I have my own theories on that. However, what we've seen in the last sort of 5-10 years has been the introduction of or merger and acquisitions in a slightly different way, and I think it's been a bit of a cultural shift again. I think the merger and acquisitions that I'm aware of, they've looked to labs that aren't necessarily exiting. So they're not looking for technicians at the end of their career. They're looking for technicians who are perhaps, they've got 10, 15 years left, and they want to realize some of that equity that's in their lab and still stay on. And again, it's that relationship with the dentists and clients that helps the corporate labs continue and grow. So I think they just took a slightly different model, and I think it's been quite successful. I think there are a few of the commercial groups out there that have done the merger and acquisitions in quite a successful way. What does that mean for the future? I don't know. I think we're certainly at a point. This is where I need my crystal ball, right? We're certainly at a point where the industry is changing rapidly, right? So we know that. We've talked about 3D printing. We talked about 3 million, CAD CAM work. It's changing rapidly. I think I'd like to think there will always be a need for that close relationship with dentists and labs. Are we going to see less labs with more technicians? I think that's probably what we'll see because of the The barriers to entry for labs. Let's kind of. I think this is the right way we're going with this. Yeah, the barrier to entry for labs historically has been very, very low. The materials, we're still using techniques that date back to the Egyptian time. Lost wax techniques, plaster and gypsum and so on, pressing acrylics. Those techniques are pretty old now, but they're still used. But to get involved to create a lab, the barrier was quite low. Whereas now investment into scanning, the PCs, obviously that we need some really powerful PCs to run the software. Skills of technicians changed. We're doing a lot more milling. We're doing a lot more 3D printing. So the milling machines are expensive. The 3D printers are expensive. The resin's quite expensive. So the barrier to entry is now a little bit higher than it was. So we're seeing perhaps more corporate setups. You're more proper. That's not the right word. That's a bit. We've seen companies running dental labs rather than one person, two-person labs doing small amounts of work. So I think that model will change a little bit. We'll probably see less of the smaller ones, more medium to larger labs, perhaps. I did read an article just recently where someone talked about an article of years gone by, where the author had said there'll be a time when, in fact, no, it was a conversation I was having with someone, but they said they'd read an article and a time when there'll be just 10 big labs in the UK, and that'll be it. The 10 labs will just be doing absolutely everything, and the smaller labs won't exist. I don't think that'll be the case. I think there'll be a lot more. There'll be a lot more labs. But there'll be less of them, but bigger. That's my crystal ball. Let's watch this back in 10 years' time and see how wrong I was.
On our next episode. But
Yeah.
man, do you think that if that happens, that will lose the touch of the dentist and a lab relationship that we started this question with? Will that, because now you're entering into more corporate and a company based structured approach, where efficiency is of key, and that communication may be put on lower priority? Is that like would might affect, or you're thinking that it's what does
Um,
your crystal ball say on
my
that?
crystal
Yeah,
ball says on that, yeah. My crystal ball would say, my gut feeling definitely would be that no, I don't think we'll lose that. I don't think we'll lose that personal touch. I think that will be the last thing that goes. I
yeah,
think because um, even with the quality of digital dentistry now, scans, the accuracy of scans is just incredible. The accuracy of the restorations that can come off a milling machine or a 3D printer are just another level. It's just fantastic. However, what that means is we can do much more complex treatments, which still mean that relationship needs to exist. I was a lab, it was something we don't do, but digital smile design. Uh, Seeing some of the work that they do and the way what needs to be communicated to and from the dentist to lab. There's so much information because it's so personal that the patient wants their teeth this way. The lab can't manufacture the restorations because there's not enough space, or the too much crowding, so they need some orthodontics, so that the lab technician has to speak to the dentist to say, this is what we need. We can provide you with this guide that will help you design that. So it just moves the bar even higher. It means that the quality and the skill can produce so much better work, that there's still that level of communication that needs to happen. So I think that'll be the last thing that disappears, that rapport. Sure, I'm crystal ball. When I'm very much retired, I'm sure you'll be able to click a button and it will, we'll be able to produce a fantastic finished item, and the patient can probably just fit it themselves in the house. But I think we're a few years off yet. I think it'll see me through to retirement.
brilliant. Matt, thank you so much for your time and honestly answering all the questions in depth. Thank you for
Pleasure.
for the last minute, doing this podcast as well. Any last minute parting thoughts, Matt, before we wrap up?
No, I think what I'd like to say is thank you again for inviting me on this. I think as a tool for communication and for learning for dental technicians, podcasts I think are just the way forward. I think they're great. So I hope whoever gets to see this enjoys it. I think with the Smile Genius stuff you're doing, I think you guys are ahead of your game. So I'm really excited for what you've got ahead of you. And thank you once again for the opportunity and very last minute, but I think it's great.
Great. Thanks, Matt.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nippon.
Thank you.